All right, welcome to another episode of Why This Beer. On today's episode, we have another special guest. Today's guest is Ken Beattie, the Executive Director of the BC Craft Brewers Guild. Welcome, Ken.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. It's
Real
our first episode with a non-brewer or not affiliated with one specific brewery. And yeah, we wanted to highlight the Craft Brewers Guild in BC and all the work that they do. Specifically, we'll be talking a bit too about the BC Craft Brewers Conference, which is happening this week at the time of recording. And yeah, we'll talk about that a bit and learn about Ken's background in beer. I'm joined as always by my co-host Aslan Graves.
Cheers, pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to be drinking beer with you. And yeah, Ken, if you wanted to start us off, what's been your journey in beer? How'd you get into the industry and what led you to where you are now?
Yeah, I've been in the industry since 1987. I was at university and I used to play club rugby, and a guy on the rugby team worked at Molson, and a friend of mine got a summer job there the year before, and I thought that sounds like a good job. And he was off to be an accountant. So his next summer job was interning in an accounting firm. And I said to the guy, hey, that job that my pal did last year, who's doing that? He's like, would you be interested in that? You'd be great at that. And I'm like, well, sounds good. Like, what are you driving around in the van, going to special events and maybe drinking the occasional beer? That sounded good. So I did that for the summer, went back to university, and I was doing customer complaints just to keep my foot in the door. Didn't actually think anything would come of it. And then they had some changes there. A guy retired, and I ended up getting offered the job. Though I grew up in Vancouver, I got offered the job in Prince George. So I moved to Prince George after I said, that's a long commute every day. But they said, no, you're going to move there. And so I lived in Prince George for just under 2 years. And I went to Rupert, up to Mackenzie, over to McBride, and down to Quesnel. So that was, it was quite the territory. And then I stayed at Wilson for 10 years. I moved back into Vancouver. Was the Kitsilano UBC rep. And then I ended up in downtown Vancouver doing everything, all of it. But it was all on premise. Back then, you didn't have cold beer wine stores, and you didn't have like retail. You kind of just did it all. There wasn't specific. And then I left Molson, one of the few guys to actually quit Molson, and I was in hospitality side, actually, ironically, the Met Hotel in New Westminster, where the conference is. I ran that. Friends of mine owned it, and I ran it for Basil Fawlty for 2.5 years, 330 rooms and 150 seat bar.
Wow.
And
it was based on your life.
I was Basil Fawlty because I really didn't know what I was doing. But I did it every day. And then I decided that I had to get out of that side of the business, and it would be better to be back in the sales side. And a friend of mine I was telling him I was going to leave, and he said, oh, Okanagan Spring is looking for somebody. And he talked to the sales. At that point, there was only a sales and marketing director for Western Canada, and no managers. And the guy who I knew, he was in the wine business previous. He heard I was looking. I hung up from my pal, and about 5 minutes later, the phone rang at the bar, and it was Steve Knight, who was the guy from Okanagan Spring, and he said, I hear you might be looking for a job. And I said, you got to come talk to me. And I started at Sleeman, and I was with Sleeman for 12 and a half years till 2012. And I was kind of everything. I started as the manager for on-premise. Then I was the provincial manager. Then I was back to on-premise, and then I was back to the provincial manager. And I left in 2012. Got restructured and was doing beer education with Prodome, the program out of Ontario, which we ran through at Sleeman. So I was doing that. I was a level 2, and I started doing that out west for Roger Matak. And Don Gordon approached me, who's now at Parallel 49 and said, we're looking for an executive director. The government, the Liberals at the time were going to review and modernize the Liquor Act. And there was a number of things that they wanted to do. Dom was on the board at that point, Todd Melnick from Tree on the board at that time, and Matt Phillips. And so I interviewed, and they told me what they wanted to do, and I told them what I thought I could offer, and right place, right time, and the rest is history. So bit of a reverse engineering from Canada's largest brewery or second largest brewery to the largest independent brewery to now craft. So
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a story.
Yeah. At the time with Molson, was it like a hard sell up in Prince George? Like,
no,
or did they
so
have a
it
strong?
was interesting. It was more Labatt country and very much Pacific Western because the brewery's there.
Right.
And I also followed somebody who had been there for a long time and had kind of mailed it in. So I was full of literally piss and vinegar, and I was 20. What was I? 26, and I was ready. I was everywhere.
Yeah.
And playing rugby all my life, I could maybe put away a beer or two, so wasn't an issue to go and socialize. So yeah.
Fair enough.
No, it was a lot of Labatt stuff. A couple of guys actually. This is a funny story. One of the Pacific Western rep at the time was Jim Dodds, who ended up at Red Truck. And Red Truck.
Oh, wow.
And so Jim and I had known each other from the time I got in the business, and he had just gotten the business too. So it was rather fun.
Yeah. If anyone wants to know more about Ken's story, there's a really good article online on, I think it's What's Brewing, that tells all about your history. But that's a really good snapshot of all the things that you've done. Is there any unique experience of like you had a unique experience working at Molson and Sleeman and Sapporo? Sapporo now owns Sleeman. What's a good quality or insight from those breweries that you brought with you to the craft world? Maybe?
Oh, probably. They're very much about goal setting and laying out a plan and being very structured in that and checking in on that plan throughout the year. You get literally monthly goals, bi-month, quarterly goals that roll up into a yearly goal and a target. And whether that be goals for a salesperson or goals for a brewer, you have to do so many brews in a month, let's say, or develop new recipes. From that point of view, that structure and that rigor, I think that business acumen and that rigor, and also because they're big and they have all sorts of resources, there's a lot of mentoring that goes on with managers who look after new reps, but you also can go and talk to the brewing side or the distribution side, and everyone is an expert in what they do versus, in the craft world, you're a jack of all trades. So to the point of, like, at one point I was the Coors Light brand manager, and one of my best buddies was the Molson Canadian brand manager, and we were told I was the assistant brand manager, he was a brand manager, and we were told not to discuss our brand plans at all to each other, and we were 2 offices away. It's like that much rigor.
It's like better to keep you siloed than like kind of you want the brands to be separate, I guess,
and you're competing for revenue against each other internally, because if Molson Canadian's on a run and Coors Light isn't, they're going to back Molson Canadian with more funds. So from that point of view, it was a very interesting experience. And I always say that it's not that there's too many, and people don't maybe like this, but it's not that there's too many breweries in BC. It honestly is the business acumen in most cases of the people running the breweries, who didn't know what they were kind of getting, didn't know how difficult and how complex the job was going to be, that gets people in that initial, oh God, this is overwhelming, This is a lot more,
Yeah.
particularly small breweries. I mean, it's difficult, as you guys know, to run
Yeah.
all the stuff you have to run, whether it be distribution and HR and then
Yeah.
the government and the government rules and everything else, and a sales team and a customer base and chasing people who owe you money and all of that. It's
Yeah. It's definitely a lot of hats, it seems
yeah.
like, in any role and within a small brewery, and like having all those resources and having them more defined and
Yeah,
focused.
we're in a big
Yeah.
company. It's siloed
Yeah.
definitely, and it's like, okay, this is what you need to do, and you're only responsible for your area. So I used to say to people that it was like having this silent partner who fed you all the expertise you needed, and as long as you hit your plan, they
Yeah.
left you alone. And if they didn't hit your plan, they would talk to you. Thankfully, I was
Yeah.
pretty good at what I did, so I didn't get the silent partner asking me questions. They just were like, "What's next for you? What can we do next? Where are we going next?" So worked out.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. I think for like you're getting back to that, like it's almost like the smaller the brewery is too, like the harder it is to wear all those hats because there's less people to be wearing
Well,
hats and
it seems
you're trying to
even
figure out so many aspects
yeah. I
too.
think even now it's magnified more than it used to be. Like COVID, we got that glimpse at COVID of what that
Yeah.
we didn't think that was going to be the future because we thought there was going to be a rebound. But the working
Right.
on the business, the working in the business, not on the business, has really taken away, post COVID and still to this day. People don't have so many of the owners and senior managers, and, well, Aslan is a good example. He can't make the conference because he's doing 6 brews this week. Like, that's crazy to me, right? Like, so
Yeah.
it's one
Yeah.
of these things where that working, you don't get time to kind of sit back and think, okay, what am I going to do in 3 months or 6 months? You're like, what am I doing tomorrow or later today?
Totally.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're
That's a lot
one
of
phone
treading water
call away
sometimes,
from your
right?
day going sideways. Where we would plan for a week
Yeah.
or 2 weeks, we had cycles and we would just go to the same places. That is not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. No.
Yeah.
No. The
Yeah.
goal, and especially with COVID too, is like people had these long-term goals, like, well, this is where we want to be. And as soon as that happened, so many of those goals were derailed like overnight, I think too, where, okay, like growth is not
Yeah.
the option now. So what's the next thing that what's a measurement that we can work towards kind of thing. And that change has happened, I think, for sure too, for a
Yeah,
lot of breweries.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So going back to your joining of the guild and kind of your first job there was to work with John
Yeah.
Yap, who was part of the government, and he was reforming the I guess all of BC's liquor laws because they hadn't been updated much since Prohibition, if not or a post Prohibition, I should say. How was it working with him and through that time, and maybe just kind of talk about what has changed? I think a lot of listeners probably know that tasting rooms are a thing and lounges are a thing, but maybe that those weren't things back in the day.
They definitely were not. They had just started for the most part, but I mean what the good news was that the government. We've always had a good working relationship. I mean, we've had to develop the working relationship, but the government was very open to it. That government at the time, the Liberals, they saw something and knew something was coming along, and and thankfully so did the board of the guild at the time, because that's why it wasn't a volunteer position. I think I mean, they used to pay somebody, but it was minimal, and and when I started,
Yeah.
I literally worked full time and got paid half time because we had no money. Like, we didn't have any money.
Yeah.
But with working with the government it was important because they were first listening to the industry, and they were listening to the industry in segments, which was a good thing. So we just presented. We
Yeah.
had a very simple plan that we went in with. At that point, the way the markup worked, it was really punitive to small breweries. I think it was $1.67 for packaged goods and 97 cents a hectoliter for if I recall, for draft. There was differences between draft and package, which was crazy. And so we worked on a markup change to make a more gradual curve that didn't have, because you actually had fiscal cliffs. And if you kind of went over 15,000 hectoliters at that point, I think it was, it really punished you. So if you did 15,200 hecs, you were losing money the next year and probably going out of business. It was that big of a jump. So we started, that's where we've got to now with the 40 cents for a hectoliter. And ironically, this is the number one thing. We'll talk about it later, but that's what we're working on again, because it's now 8-10 years later. And the system that we thought was going to be a great system 10 years ago is not reflective of the market now, but we'll maybe get to that. The second thing we had to do was increase awareness of just the craft beer industry and what it meant to be locally owned and operated versus Molson, Labatt, and Sleeman at the time, and how that affected the communities. And what we hoped, we actually thought and what we ended up seeing was there'd be 80 breweries in almost every community, ideally. So we probably were under 20 breweries or 30, maybe 30, 40 communities. Now we're in over 80, right? And so the government also recognized that. The Ministry of Agriculture's guys used to say to me, you only refer to this as a world-class beer destination every time you open your mouth. Just keep saying it and saying it and saying it till it becomes true. And so that was a great piece of advice from the Agriculture Ministry. And then the other, so we were working on that. And that was also increased awareness at retail, either government and private retail. Private retail was always ahead of the curve versus the government stores for support, mainly because it was small business to small business in communities. And they're both independently owned for the most part. Back then, there wasn't big chains owning the LRSs. And then it was also to make sure that the public knew that we were a small business. We kind of benefited from the whole 100-mile diet thing that was created actually in Kitsilano. So people started to realize they wanted to know where things came from and who made them. And the craft brewing world worked perfect with that. And then the last thing was this world class beer destination. And that virtually became, because we had a world-class food culture and a world-class wine culture, we thought, if we can do that with beer, if we could do half of that with beer, we'd be way ahead of the game. And that's how the BC Ale Trail started. So it was a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces. The downside of the review was there was 76 recommendations, which was insane. But we literally ticked our 3 boxes, all got ticked. It's a lot to juggle. So we were happy about that. And then, as I say, then we started just the momentum. But the biggest change was, to an extent, the taxation. But really, it was the tasting rooms. When manufacturers could have people in the tasting room, and you didn't only be restricted to the what was it, 4 12 ounces.
It was like
4
12 ounces.
3 4-ounce servings or 1 bottle of beer. Once they moved that, and growlers, because back then growlers were, everybody thought that was the biggest thing going.
I mean, that was the glory days of going and get a flight, pick what you got off the flight, get it in a growler, and leave.
You had to, and what was most important about that is you had to go to the brewery to get it, because hardly anybody was nobody was in cans for the most part. They were all in 650s for the most part, and growlers. And so the small producers had to, it was word of mouth. It was selling off the back of the truck, right? Which was, which evolved into the tasting room culture that is so important today, and why I think we're so successful.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That was a time of like, I remember when we were at Yellow Dog, there would just be lineups out the door for people to fill their growlers, and like We're like, we need another growler filler. We cannot fill these fast enough.
It's
Like,
insane.
it's a different time now for sure.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
one of the companies,
Yeah.
this is a byproduct of, we talk about spin-offs, and not only is it the beer industry, but it's all the spin-off industries that we support. And unfortunately, big suppliers back in the day for growlers and glassware was Universal Packaging up in Vernon, and they've just gone bankrupt.
Yeah.
Right? They're out of business.
Yeah.
Totally.
Which really sucks, unfortunately, but no one, there's still people using. Do you guys use growlers? Like, it's minimal compared to what, even if it's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we don't sell growlers. Haven't for, honestly, I think the whole time I've been there 4 years now. And like we'll fill them if people come in, but yeah, it's few and far between, and we've actually closed off our growler. We used to have at Main Street a growler dedicated side to the brewery, to the tasting room. And now it's like that length of line is 5 to 8 liters of beer. They're not gonna prime that, and it'll literally sit for who knows how long, and then people aren't getting a good quality growler. So it's only on the tasting room side.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, that's a good snapshot where you like split your tasting room, because at the time there was so many people coming for growlers, so you didn't want to like have the line go through the tasting room. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
That's wild.
And like, I mean, I guess Neighborhoods probably was built with a newer model in the sense that growlers weren't really that much of a factor.
Yeah, we still like have growler filler taps, but they're just like pulled off of our other taps, so not like a big to do for it. So we fill growlers, and I think we have some branded growlers, but as soon as that skid runs out, I don't know. I don't know if we'll buy some more. I think we might have go through like a few boxes a year kind of thing for new growlers. Yeah.
I mean, that's even the same with bombers. We were talking with Mitch from Daggerad a few weeks back, and he was like announcing that they're getting rid of bombers for the most part. They're one of the last ones.
They're transitioning
they must be one of the last ones. Right.
Yeah.
So I think some of the
Phillips had a good stronghold, or Driftwood had a good stronghold for a long time.
Same with, I guess, probably Strangefellow still has like a lot of their kind of one-off beers or seasonal beers, like Boris. I don't know if they offer it in a can. I know when I get it, it's always still in a 650. So
yeah. Ken, do you want to describe what your specific role is on the guild, and then who is on the guild, and how people are chosen to be on the guild? Be on the guild.
So I'm the executive director. So if you figure it's a collective voice of all the breweries. So jokingly, I have 220 bosses because I answer literally to any of the members, because we're a member-based organization. And but we have an election every 2 years for board members, and those board members are voted in still based on their size. So there is 2 breweries over 15,000 hectoliters on the board. There's 2 breweries under 15,000 hectoliters. And again, this is a legacy from when we started in 2012, basically, or 2013. And then the 3 most popular vote getters, no matter where they are or what size they are, get voted. And so currently Don Ferrian at Bomber is the chair. He has actually been the chair for quite a while, which is excellent because there's consistency there. Julia Hanlon from Steamworks is the vice chair. Adam Henderson is the secretary. Mo Hanford from Coast Mountain is the accountant, the treasurer. And then Ben Coley from Daggerad, Sam Payne from Rewind and Parkside, and Tom Riley from Vancouver Island. And so we have an election every 2 years. You have to be a member in good standing to be elected. We had our largest, actually, I think we had 17 people run for the positions, which was our largest last year.
Great.
The downside is the size thing is still, it probably could be changed maybe in the next election. And unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily, what would be nice is if we could be representative of more of the province. We certainly have more people running from like whether it be Penticton or like into the Kootenays. We've never actually had anyone from the Kootenays, anyone from the north. Actually, anyone basically from the island in the Lower Mainland. Mike Coghill was on the board for a number of years, and he kind of in two places, so that worked out well. He living up in Penticton, he was able to kind of get that message. Ideally, it would be great. I don't know how to do it, so if somebody out there has a good idea, I'm open to how we can get representation from the whole province. But that being said, I think we do a very good job of being representative of the whole province, because anyone can call any of the board members or me and say, hey, I've got this problem. And my job basically in its easiest form is, I represent the daily business along with a small team, which includes Monica Frost basically doing the BC Ale Trail because it's such a beast now. And then Lundy Dale working pretty much full time up in Penticton for us, just doing a lot of the admin and managing both parts of this from an admin point of view for us and membership fees. Unfortunately, chasing people to pay membership takes a lot of time and effort. So little plea there to please pay your membership.
Pay your membership.
But so it's been an interesting. I think it's the power has always been. That was the other thing. The first thing that our mandate was become the collective voice, because without the collective voice, we're fortunate in the beer industry versus other industries. Like distilling is neutral grain or all natural. And so there's this chasm between those two.
Right.
Is it juice for ciders or is it tree fruit for ciders? There's a chasm. We don't fall into that. We're just small, independent. You have to be independently owned and operated. You have to have a manufacturing license and a Canadian excise license to be a member in good standing. So I think it's been a really successful model. I don't think anyone thought. We also, compared to the other organizations, whether it be the pub association, the restaurant association, the wine growers, we had last year paid 216 members out of just under 240 breweries. So no one kind of has that kind of 90% number, that buy-in, which when we go to government, that makes a massive difference, because they're not dealing with this inner chaos that we might have lots of inner chaos, but when we go forward, we're a collective group.
Was it hard when you were new to your role, finding what that voice was and like making sure that everybody was represented, being, have that politically neutral, I guess, being,
like we started with under
politically
15,
neutral.
We started with under 15 members.
Wow.
And the way you became a member,
you can only go up from there.
They used to do a multi-pack, a 12-pack, and the way you became a member is you donated the beer into the 12-pack, and that made you a member. So that was an interesting part in the first interview.
Quite an offering.
Like, what?
Yeah.
And there was less than 50 breweries. And so
wow.
So what happened was we started with the knowing that the government was going to make these changes. And we hired a lobbyist. That was actually the first thing we did. And because you needed people to know people to get you into the right people. And then we put together our plan, but that didn't necessarily resonate because you didn't have to be a member to get any benefit. And then around the table, at that, we also moved, I think at that same time, we went from 3 board members to 7. And that might be the first time Don Gordon was on that board, but so was Don Farian. And we decided what to focus on was member benefits. So what can we do that benefits everybody, but you have to actually be in the guild? Because if we do a tax change, whether you're in it or not, you get it. But so we went after kind of an insurance provider. We went after a payment supplier, Moneris. We went after, that's when we started with Asira insurance. They weren't called that then, but they are now. So those sorts of things. And then we got involved. It took a little while, but we got involved with what was the Business of Craft Beer by the Vancouver Magazine, was a conference, a 1-day, half-day conference. And we worked with them the next year and it got bigger. And then our goal was to have our own conference. That was always the end game, was that would add value. And when we started to do that, that's what, and then lots of breweries started to open because of the tasting rooms and the change in tax. So the change in tax really came 2016, 2017. Took us 2 years. It's a slow, agonizing process. It hopefully isn't slow and agonizing this time, or as slow. And that, all that built into value. And so it was this groundswell where new brewers would say, because we were at that point opening 20 plus 25 to 30 breweries a year. And so if you opened on Port Moody, Mike was telling you should be involved with these guys. They kind of we've got this association. It'd be much more beneficial if we were all in it. And so we just started to get, like, everybody was coming to us, which was nice. And if they don't, we don't have really too many large members who aren't partners or members. But if they don't, they either have a very good reason for it. They don't think there's value. That's fair. Or they're small and they just are like, it doesn't mean anything to me. Like, I can't even afford it.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. So often we let people kind of, benefit, and then they come to us, hey, when you're ready, come to us. Right. Yeah. We just check in.
Fair. Yeah.
We'll take you in later. Don't you worry. Yeah. No judgments here.
Us.
Exactly.
One of
us. But there's your plug. Support the guild. Become a member.
Let us do the work that we should do, not chasing you for your fees.
For membership fees. I like Lundy. Don't make her work so hard, okay?
Exactly.
Yeah. Come on. So I guess what's the guild currently working on with the government, and what are some long-term goals that you have for the industry?
What we're working on now is, ironically, markup once again, because as we all know, coming out of COVID, there was no rebound. Cash flow is the biggest challenge. Most of our members are in 5 to 10 year leases that are up. Most of our members are not paying down the debt that they've incurred with everything else. And then you guys know better than anyone, the amount of cost of goods increases is through the roof. So we are working very, very focused, laser focused on getting back in front of the government, which we've already had meetings, to lower the markup rate. So currently, as you know, it's 40 cents or $40 for a hectoliter on 15,000 and below. That's not reflective of the market in any way, shape, or form, because 85% of our members don't do 15,000 hectoliters, and probably 70% of those members could almost take, probably 50% could take 10 years to get there. So we're small brewers, and so we're asking the government to change that, lower it from $40 to $10, mirroring Alberta. The slow, gradual curve. And the other thing that we've done is, because there was lots of gaps. So if you're small, we're going to reduce it by, the goal is, not maybe, the goal will happen, is we'll reduce it by 75%. If you're up to kind of 160, which would be far and away our biggest breweries, no one's there yet. But at the 160 level, it would be a 22% savings. And then if you're kind of up in the upper echelon, like even if it goes, to make it even, you have to do Molson Labatt numbers. So it stops at 350,000.
Yeah.
We want to see it extended from 350 to 500, which is also the federal excise ask. And that's a different story. And so it starts lower, runs longer, because what happens now is, if, as you guys know, and even well, you guys, if you're over 15,000, you know, every time you grow by a couple of thousand, you pay more in markup. And if you're one of the bigger breweries, the top 5 breweries, their markup is changed significantly in the last 5 or 10 years since we've started. But at the top end, it stops at 350,000. So as much as Molson, Labatt, and Sleeman have grown, they pay no additional markup. They max out at $8.
Oh, interesting.
So that makes to us an unlevel playing field. And that's not what's supposed to happen in the liquor industry. That's one of the things that the NDP, the current government, has been very adamant about leveling the playing field. You guys probably did or know that the government just finished surveys on sales agreements, and the sales agreements fall into markup, or the markup falls into the sales agreement. So that opened the door for us to have this discussion. So that is kind of our number one focus that we spend a lot of time on. Obviously, we always go with reduction of red tape. 8-10 months to do something. We're still talking. I was just at Tin House at their anniversary, and they've applied for their TESA to be permanent in August. I hope I'm not getting her in trouble. August of 2022, and they're still waiting. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a temporary
temporary
patio, right?
Patio that was from COVID and has been in place since COVID, and they've never had a complaint, but they're still waiting for the approval. That's ridiculous. And Main Street went through the same thing. Nigel and I on the paper, on the front of the paper, giving it the thumbs down. So it's that reduction of red tape is always ongoing, and then there's certainly concern about low risk drinking guidelines and making sure that there's some accuracy in what's being portrayed there, because the report that came out that most people think has changed from a Health Canada point of view has not changed. Low risk drinking guideline is 10 drinks for women in a week and 15 drinks for men, not 2 drinks a week, which the CCSA, Canadian Centre for Substance Abuse report, which was just a report, got somehow they give them, they're very good at marketing and manipulating and getting their story out. And so it's a report that's not been peer reviewed, but people take it to be the gospel. To the fact that on Health Canada site, if you go on the Health Canada site right now, it tells you what the standard drinks are, 10 and 15 for men and women, but it also has a link that says, here's what this guideline is. And we're responsible users. We have a social and a cultural responsibility. All of us do in this industry because we deal with an addictive product. We all understand that, but education, just reducing is not the way to go without education. You have to educate people on what's right and what's wrong, and what abuse is and what isn't abuse. And so we're fighting that both provincially, because the provincial government through the Cancer Agency worked on a whole media program out of the blue and caught the industry by surprise, to be honest. Nobody asked the industry their opinion, which is interesting.
Perfect.
And but we're also doing that federally. And then on a federal point of view, we work through the Canadian Craft Brewers Association, and that is about excise relief also. So also a taxation issue. And the escalator tax that everyone kind of hears about because Beer Canada spends a lot of money fighting it, thankfully, on our behalf, it's capped at 2%. But the golden goose in that was we were already, as the CCBA, and particularly breweries in BC who were the impetus for that, which was kind of Vancouver Island was very involved, Phillips was very involved, and Parallel 49 was incredibly involved, Don Gordon. And they were able to, working with the CCBA and their own kind of the world, BC, Canada's largest breweries, they were able to get 50% reduction for breweries under 15,000 hectoliters. So for a small brewery, that's $1,700 if you're kind of under 2,000 hex, which really doesn't seem a lot, but it's triple your membership fee.
We'll take it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, there you
Yeah.
go.
But
Yeah.
for a brewery that's 15,000 and above, it's $86,000. So we've got
Wow.
we would like to see excise not stop at 75,000, which seems very small, and go to 500,000,
Yeah.
and also again 50% reduction all the way up. And so
Yeah.
that is in play. It's been, Christine Como has been in front of she's the executive director for the national organization. She's been in front of finance committees. There's a team going back to do something at the end of October, storm the hill basically, and they're going to have 8 meetings with prime minister's office, finance, agriculture, every kind of person they have to talk to. So yeah, there's always that, and
Yeah.
it's always about cash flow at the bottom of the end of the day. How do we save the members money? Because the industry, you can't
Yeah.
pass it on. We're now at a point where you can't pass the price on. You can't pass. If we built
Yeah.
houses,
No.
we'd just be adding the 31% increase to your bill. But we can't do that in the beer industry,
Yeah.
particularly craft beer, because we're
No.
already
Yeah.
expensive.
We're already
We're
premium.
right there.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I know. Yeah, you kind of mentioned it with you mentioned the CCBA, which is the Canadian Craft Brewers Association, for those that don't know. Like, how do you, as the BC Craft Beer Guild, work with other associations like them? And then do you work with other associations like there's the Alberta
Small
Craft
brewers, yeah.
Brewers Association or Small Brewers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what this is called. Sorry, Shane. But yeah, you can. How do you guys work together, or sometimes do you not work together,
Yeah,
or
no,
how
we
does that
work
work out?
very closely together. So the CCBA this is kind of surprising, but that was another thing of we had almost every province has some sort of organization, whether they're as adapt
Right.
or as nimble or as organized, not nimble, as organized as the bigger provinces. So we're robust,
Yeah.
Alberta's robust, Quebec's robust, and Ontario's robust. So big, kind of moves
Yeah.
staffs, everything, not big staffs, but just staff that are dedicated like I am to it every day. And then, so that was formed, oh God, 5 years ago only, I think. I was actually asked to be one of the founding, I'm on the founding board. And so there's every province and every territory is represented. We meet, there's an executive committee that I'm part of. We meet once a month at least. And then the board itself, which is all there's every province and territory. And then there's also, 5 brewery representatives, so one for the West, then one for Quebec, one for Ontario.
Okay.
And they also meet. They're non-voting, but we meet and this is where we do things such as the federal, it's all federal stuff, but we share ideas from a provincial point of view, and generally we're all in agreement. It's very difficult to go east-west in this country. That for some people is a big lever that they'd like to see change. For other provinces, they're still kind of protective.
It's the opposite.
So we'll see where
Yeah.
where that lies. But we've also had, as I say, this 50% reduction that had a ton to do with the CCBA also. The Canada's biggest breweries, the big, the breweries who are doing well over 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, some cases 100,000 hecks. Those breweries were working on taxation because really it was something that was near and dear to them, because as you get further up, it penalizes you. But when they added the 800 plus breweries who are members of the CCBA, so every brewery in BC is a member of the CCBA by being a member in good standing of our association. And we just pay for that membership ourselves for the breweries. You don't have to pay twice. And all the provinces kind of do that. And it's been successful because now you're representing again the collective voice of 800 plus breweries. And so we way probably closer because it's a new organization, which sounds kind of crazy over 5 years, but it's not massively funded. In fact, it's like it's what we did at the start. It took us 2 or 3 years to get up and running, and then the momentum built. Honestly, the CCBA is in the same boat. It's just on a national level, which seems counter, but you can't get money, you don't get funding. We're not going to, everyone is tight. It's not like we have piles of money at the BC Craft Brewers Guild. We just decide if we have, if the membership works out and we have a successful conference, we've ticked 2 boxes for, that's how we get our money. Other than we do with the BC Ale Trail, we do get cost sharing from Destination BC to manage half of the BC Ale Trail. And that's the only funding we actually get, which is much appreciated and why we're successful.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of collaboration right there too.
When does the CCBA mix pack come out?
We have talked about it. What they should do, I think, is because the awards are here in Vancouver, we should do a gold medal pack.
Yeah. Oh,
that's my idea.
Yeah.
No, we've talked about it. But again,
claim it now here.
Each province is so difficult to get entry into. But I think it would be pretty cool to have if you could get the liquor stores or even the private stores. You could just go private. Not everybody's is private. I mean, Ontario's now changed. They now have LRS. Yeah. But you could do a mixed pack of just gold medal winners. I think that'd be a killer.
There you go.
That'd be incredible. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah. Just got to find a host brewery at each place and then just like get them to contract brew or something.
Yeah, it's contract brew. Wink.
Yeah. You have to contract to yourself to make it, right?
Yeah.
You know how
get it over the border.
There's another thing we're working on, but that's too technical.
Yeah.
That's in reduction of red tape.
You mentioned the BC Ale Trail. Do you want to talk about that and kind of like that's fairly new. I mean, fairly new, like probably 5 years old now.
Okay.
So, yeah. But maybe talk about that, and maybe a couple of those years were, years where people weren't necessarily blazing the trails of traveling through BC. So now, people can get out there and do an ale trail. Maybe talk about that and Monica and all the hard work that she does as well.
It really started in that first initial, let's do what the wine industry did. People go to Kelowna and Penticton, and you guys know, especially up there, like the Golden Mile and everything. Why can't we do that? And there was already, and, ironically, I guess at that point, Brewers Row existed in Port Moody. So that was, that's interesting. People are really kind of going there. So it was interesting because I was working on a tourism thing that I was not quite sure how it was going to work. But we were working with a company in Victoria who did our website called The Number, who we still work with. In fact, Chris is the owner, is talking at the conference with Monica about the BC Ale Trail and what they're doing next and currently in next. And Paul Kamen, who was with Sunshine Coast Tourism and Vancouver Craft Beer Week, one of the original guys there, he was doing the circle tour from Powell River onto the island and back to the Sunshine Coast. And then Joe Weeb was kind of peddling maps in Victoria. And we were all kind of working in our own little silos. And then someone said, do you know this guy and this guy? And we met. And then Destination BC or Tourism BC changed how they their marketing co-op program, made it much more accessible, removed a whole bunch of red tape, which also might have been honestly part of the YAP thing. And I think I was maybe the third person through that door. We said,
awesome. Yeah.
Here's what we want to do.
This is perfect. Yeah, we have a thing for you.
We started with 7 self-guided tours and in a website, and the money gets matched. So the destination marketing organizations, which tend to be in almost every community, but not every community, or the breweries put in some money. the destination marketing company organizations put in the money. That creates one half of the pot. And then the government through Destination BC, after you apply, rigorously apply, which Monica that's her superpower. She does all that work. And then we get funded. And it works out that we end up with kind of like $200,000. So the program is anywhere between $400,000 and $450,000 to promote tourism. Now it's self-guided tours. Yeah. It's an app that's free on Apple or Google Play. It geolocates and it's gamified. You can get 10 points every time you go if people are unfamiliar with it. But it geolocates. So if you're in downtown Vancouver and you've seen the podcast and you're wondering where Main Street Brewery is, you just click in it and it'll tell you in order how close you are. And if you're in the Kootenays, same thing. And it tells you what beers are on, who brews, where it is, what their specials are, what their food menu is, what entertainment they have, what special events they do. Are they inclusive? Do they have wheelchair access? All sorts of things. What awards have they won? So it is really become a beast. It was kind of off the side of our desks, and now it is a absolute full-time job that I don't know what we'd do without Monica Frost doing it, to be honest, because she has really her superpower is that being able to get us the money, but her superpower is managing what the government expectation of that money. Here's the thing you have to hit, and if you've ever filled out a grant, that's an art form. She's figured out how to do exactly. She marries what the government wants and what Tourism Destination BC wants with what our needs are. But she's also collaborative with the breweries. So she's asking them, what new programs do you want? And different areas have different levels of success with it. Penticton is probably one of the strongest areas for it. They work as a team. They meet. They discuss what they want done. All the interesting thing that's kind of also happened across basically the provinces, though we're the guild and we're the umbrella, each kind of area, so whether it be East Vancouver or Brewery Creek, have their own little meetings also, or the guys in Central Okanagan. Yeah. And they talk about what's best for them. And then now Monica's tapping into that, no pun intended, to say, hey, here's what we can offer. What about this idea? So currently we're doing sip and stays, which I think is a cool thing. It's in shoulder season. You go to a hotel, I think it's 80 plus hotels in BC. They work with the local brewery. We now have a voucher. We used to try to get cans of beer, or we'd go to places that sold the beer in their lounge, but that doesn't necessarily help the members. So now we've gone this voucher program where you can go check into your hotel, they give you the voucher, and then you go to the local brewery. And if there's 4 breweries, you can go to any one of those breweries or all those breweries and exchange it. Yeah. So it's driving traffic into our members. So that's a new wrinkle that I think is a really cool thing. But yeah, the government loves it, man. We go to tourism meetings and we present and people are like, oh, this is the coolest thing, because people love to hear about beer. They love to drink beer, and politicians love to get their pictures in front of real shiny objects like tanks.
So it's a win-win. It's a classic. Yeah. Well, and it makes sense that, people are coming to whatever town in BC, they go to the brewery, and that's only their jumping off point to checking out that town. They're spending money in each town, and that's what people want. It's like, we want to be people touring BC, spending money in these towns, and it doesn't just, it benefits the breweries, which is great for us, but for tourism, they're not just hopefully not just drinking the whole weekend. They're going for brunch, and they're, I don't know, going on a tour of
the lens was always the brewery. The lens was never about, it was supposed to be brewery tourism. Come to the tasting room and fill a growler and meet the brewers, but the lens was always the brewery will get you into the neighborhood or the town or the village or the city. And the people you meet in the tasting room, by virtue of how tasting rooms are set up, which aren't individual table service, and you have to go up and then sit at a long table and you have to have conversation. You have to, unless you're completely highly socially introverted, which is great. You're in there, but you have to say, "Oh, you're drinking blonde beer. I'm drinking a dark beer. What are you having?" Oh, I come here all the
Yeah.
time. Oh, I'm just visiting from. Oh, what are you going to do? And there you go. And that's been the magic of tasting rooms and the BC Ale Trail. And what a lot of the members don't know is we have all that information, because the way it works is you don't have to go to a staff member to get checked in. You just check in on your phone. So really, the brewery knows you're even part of the Ale Trail until they ask, and then we can show them exactly how many people went in there. And we know we had M&P do a study for this taxation presentation, and the average person who goes to a brewery spends, on average, $125 in that community, whether it be in parking or
awesome.
That's great.
whatever. But that's the average. So that's pretty impressive, right? Between beers and, hey, I'm going to go eat an ice cream at Rocky Point.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I feel like too, it's like whenever you travel, like going to a brewery, it's kind of like going to the local bakery or something like that. Like it is very much a community hub, and whether it's just in small talk with the bartender, the regular that's next door, or next to you at the bar, or there's an open mic night or something that you stumbled in on. It's like there's always like those extra things.
But
and
the magic of the tasting
you end up being like, where should I go?
The magic of the tasting room is it's become a community meeting place. It's different than a bar.
Yeah.
Right? You can take your kids there. That's different, right? You tend to, it's become what might have been the neighborhood pub of the 80s, when that was, I'm old enough to remember, neighborhood pubs, this is cool. And then the coffee shops or the Starbucks or the whoever's of the 90s, early 2000s. Now the tasting room has become that meeting place and a sense of pride. You guys are in, areas where there's all sorts of options. But boy, if you're in the north and you're in a brewery, the Kamloops breweries are competitive against the Kelowna breweries, and the Kelowna breweries against Penticton, and the breweries in the north, like, Smithers does better than Prince George. And, there's this civic pride of, our beer's way better than your beer in a nice, congenial way, right? And that's that's the magic, man. That's the no one knew that. If I would have known that, I'd be talking to you from a beach.
Turns out we're kind of competitive, low key. Yeah.
I mean, we're not all lying like we used to, maybe, or what people thought. It's healthy competition, right? It's healthy competition.
For sure.
Yeah. Hey, for playful fun, what is everybody drinking tonight? Normally we focus on one brewery, but tonight we didn't have to. Darren, are you drinking Neighborhood?
Yeah. I'll shout it out. Beer? Freshy Fresh. Back again. Fresh West Coast IPA this year. Fresh hops from fresh Citra hops from the Yakima Valley.
Nice. You guys usually do Sabro, right?
We've been doing Sabro the last couple of years, but decided to switch it out. I knew this year was going to be good for hops, and I was like, I just can't really pass up on a good Citra year. So I was like, let's just do that instead. The Sabro beers have been good, but I'm also this year's version is like a West Coast IPA, and so it looks nice and clear.
Oh, crystal clear.
It's tasting very, very good, if I do say so myself.
Nice. What about you, Ken? What'd you grab?
I had something dark. Empty.
He said no.
It seemed like a day to drink
Must
dark
have been
beers today in Vancouver. I had Parallel 49's Schwartz beer. Their dark lager.
Schwartz beer. Nice.
I had that the other day. Was that from the mix pack?
Well, yes, it was. Sure. My son does some merchandising and tastings for them, so I might have come home. I tried it last year when they were did their launch of their new brew house, and I honestly, I'm partial to dark beers. I quite like them, and I really like this one. but I can't tell you more than it's dark because I'm not a pro. I don't know hops. I don't know any of that. What's in it? But it's tasty and it worked.
Yeah. I mean, an empty glass is proof in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Aslan?
I had the Superflux Willibald Amber Ale of all things.
Yeah,
Who'd
I
have
thought that was a
thought,
typo
hey?
when I
Wow.
saw it.
Yeah.
What's going on over there? What's he doing over there?
I don't know.
Apparently, Adam's getting old and only drinks amber ales now. So that's yeah.
One
It's,
of us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's like the last sip there. It is very amber.
Wow.
It is very
Wow.
clear. It's nice. Yeah, it's great. It's nice, refreshing beer. I don't have to overanalyze too much.
Here we go. All three of us drinking different beers,
good.
huh? Isn't this a beautiful world?
Yeah.
If we're in the hot tub time machine, we'd all be drinking a lager, or maybe a liquor store.
Yeah. Or Sleeman's Honey Brown.
Sleeman Honey Brown.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I got my fix like so many with Shaftesbury Cream Ale. That was my gateway. Gateway. I actually was calling in Vancouver when it was popular, and I would see it, and I was like, "What is that beer? Oh man, it's kicking your ass! Oh, well, can I try it?" And I drank it, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's good beer!" And that was probably a fireable offense, Molson. If you were I'm drinking that to see what the competition is. It was like, no, you drink one beer and that's it.
Yeah.
And but I would tootle around Kitsilano and say, "Oh, that Shaftesbury, I've heard about it," even though I just had one. What's that taste like? Oh, it's popular. Have you not tried it? No, I haven't. Should I try that? Give me a little bit.
Yeah, that
just
was a
for
strong
science, just for research.
It took me 15 years to get there, but I got there.
Yeah,
that was a stronghold for a while.
It was crazy. That and ironically, Okanagan Spring, because they were putting taps in, so they would put one little tower with pale ale, and pale ale was a large brand back then. Still is, I guess. Not like it was everywhere on tap. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Ken. Now that you visited so many breweries in BC, you don't want to pick favorites, so maybe we'll just do shout outs. If you want to shout out some.
Have you been to Neighborhood?
I've had beers with you in Neighborhood, so it checks out.
Series. It's a really good beer, but I don't know. I can't remember who it is.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate. I haven't traveled as much as I certainly would like to around the province. But I do, I've got a couple, maybe more than a couple. I went to Campbell River and I went to Beachfire this summer. And I thought it was really good.
Cool.
Like really good.
Nice.
The food was good, the atmosphere, the room, everything was super cool about it, and I thought the beer was on point. I'm not a brewer, but I know a little bit, I guess, to be a bit dangerous, but all the beers were super good. A couple of years ago, I was in White Tooth and Golden, and I just really liked his beers. I do also like kind of higher test beers and darks and barrel-aged stuff. And
you need it when it's as cold and golden. You need some
cold
ABV up there.
Something charismatic, just like you.
Yeah.
It was good. I had the fortune that I was on my way to a festival, and I went to Rossland Brewery for the first time. And it is
nice. Yeah, those guys are great.
Cool. And they've got it figured out. They don't want to be anything other than the Rossland Beer Company. And they just keep growing and growing.
Yeah, small.
It's tight knit. I was there on a Friday afternoon. They've got music starting. I'm like, it's 2:00. It's packed. I'm like, what's going on? Every Friday. What? Oh yeah, we got music, so they got to get in early. I'm like, oh my God. So that was kind of cool. And anything, where else? This is a bit of all of them, but Courtney Comox in Cumberland, the 3 Cs up there. Love it. whether land and sea, really like Cumberland.
Yeah.
I've only been there a couple of times, but they also have great pizza there, or even or across the street, they have great pizza.
Yeah.
And then Rusted Rake, when I'm on the island, I've been stopping in there on my way.
Yeah.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
what else? Oh, and I went this summer also to the first time. Shockingly, for a guy who grew up in BC, I went to the West Coast. I went to Tofino in Ucluelet.
Oh.
And really like that. And I'm
Oh.
also a fan of, a friend of mine lives in Port Alberni, so I love Port Alberni. Yeah. All the breweries in Port Alberni.
There you go.
Twin Cities.
Yeah.
And yeah, they got their stuff going on there. But they're all good.
Yeah.
I like them all.
Twin City and
Dog
Dog
Mountain.
Mountain.
Yeah.
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 There's quite
And
a few
Alberni, I went to Alberni.
national awards in Port
They
Alberni
are,
of all places.
They're very
Yeah.
A friend
Between
of mine,
those two.
actually was in the hospitality business. He owned the hotel there, and he's retired. But he sits on actually Port Alberni's tourism, and he's on the calls with the BC Ale Trail, and he loves to tell me how many awards that his breweries win in his town.
Yeah. I mean, for a small place, it's surprising. Something in the water.
Yeah. Some high tide rises all boats. I don't know.
It's the inland port, you know.
But it's those. I mean, obviously, those are the smaller kind of communities. I mean, you don't stick around this industry as long as I have, and not like a lot of beers and a lot of. I mean, there is obviously.
When do I
like
stop?
To say and joke with people. I love all my children equally, but I play with some a little bit more often, and so. But that's only between me and myself and I.
Yeah,
there you go.
But I think it's a good encouragement. Like, if you haven't been out of your region, go check out some of these breweries when you're on vacation, or make a point to hit up the Port Alberni Ale Trail. You know that's the thing to do. It's awesome.
And I haven't been there in a while, so I feel kind of regretful mentioning it, but I guess it'll be good. Have you guys been to Empty Keg in Merritt? Like,
I haven't,
also
no.
Beers on point. Like nothing. Well, when I went there, nothing like out of the ordinary. He's not doing double aged cherry saisons, blah blah. But man, his beers. Whew, I was just like a red ale. I was like, oh my god, this is one of the greatest red ales I've ever had in my life. So yeah, if you're driving up to see
nice,
Darren, just stop in there on your way.
Yeah, just stop in there on the way. There you go. Yeah. You got to gas up anyways. Might as well get a beer while you do.
Yeah. Don't go to the petrol can. Go over there.
Yeah. There you go.
And I'm sure there's a whole bunch that I missed. Granted, there is, but we could go on forever.
There's tons. I just, it's sometimes it's nice to hear from, about these other breweries that you maybe not maybe you haven't heard of ever. So yeah, there's tons of, like, not just breweries in BC, but fantastic breweries all over BC. So come check it out.
I was in the north for the Kiwanis Beer Festival, so I got to try all the beers. And we just actually used Smithers Brewery on their Sour Power at Whistler on the BC Ale Trailer. That's usually where I get them. We try to encourage people to send us kegs. And that would be cool, because, like we talked about, Craig out in Wheelhouse. I've had his beers, but never in the location.
Yeah.
And I also, though I did go at that point when I was last in Prince George, Trench and Crossroads, which are two. I used to, as I said, in the 80s, I lived in Prince George. And if you would have told me there'd be three, Deadfall wasn't open yet, but there would be two really super cool craft breweries too. Big, huge, like Crossroads is a massive place. It actually has like a curling thing out front. It's in the winter. It's like so cool as it should.
Jesus. Wow.
Cold as hell up there, obviously.
Yeah.
But and though I haven't been to Deadfall, we all know Deadfall won the beer of the year at the Canada Beer Cup.
Canada Beer Cup last year. Yeah.
He's doing it well. So that whole, I mean, that's the magic of, if you're going, get on the BCL trail and find out what's up there, and you might be pleasantly surprised to find out where those breweries are and how well the quality of the beer is. Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always a perfect beer for every set and setting.
Yeah.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just actually up in Smithers
Oh,
this weekend, visiting family, and visited Smithers Brewing Company, and their beer is
yeah.
super good. Yeah, very very dialed in, and like tap room was busy when I was there, and like a lot of my family when I was visiting, like, what did you think? Because they're
Yeah.
like, I don't know. They're kind of for the most part converted lager drinkers to
Yeah.
craft beer drinkers, and I was like, your brewery is too good for your small town. It's it punches up for sure.
He makes killer
So yeah,
sours.
that was
His
cool to see.
sours. And I'm not necessarily a huge sour fan, but boy, I really,
Yeah,
I like a sour, but I wouldn't have session them. But I really
yeah,
like.
Yeah.
He sent one of them down. I was like, oh, I think I've had this before. This is really good. And yeah, it was good and very popular on the trailer.
cool. Well, what takes up your time outside of the beer world when you're
Oh,
not working on
Yeah.
the ale trail
Hard to
and
imagine
talking
there
to
is
the
much time.
government?
Yeah.
Yeah,
my family and my dog. A lot of dog walking. We live in the North Shore, so we're really close to the trails. And my daughter
Nice.
lives in Toronto, but my son lives in here in the house, and my wife. And so we both work from home, so we're able to manage our time effectively. Uh, what else? I like
yeah,
to golf. Yeah, like to golf
uh,
and
nice.
travel. I've been doing a bit more traveling of late, which I didn't do for a number of years for whatever reasons. But now that I'm almost an empty nester, there's been a couple more trips. So my wife and I very much enjoy that. Yeah, but that and
Nice.
my dog walking. Yeah,
Nice. Great. Well, I don't want to take up more of your time. You're busy cramming for a big conference in the
yeah.
coming days here. So yeah, if anyone's going to the BC Craft Brewers Conference, I'll be there. Come say hi. And
I'll be
obviously
there
Ken
too.
will be
Come
there,
say hi.
given his address in the morning to some hungover brewers, like every other year.
Yeah.
Uh, the Thursday crowd's always a little bit more lively than the Friday.
Today.
Yeah. Ken with the voice
Yeah.
that wakes the dead.
Yeah.
It's much better than it used to be because when we didn't have a conference, the only time everyone was together was at the Great Canadian Beer Festival, and we used to do after the brewers party. We did a 9 a.m. meeting at the Vancouver Island tap room. Well, upstairs their boardroom, but they didn't even have a tap room. That was waking the dead. 90 minutes of me talking, which is painful to begin with, and not one question.
Yeah.
People were
Very.
like, some people were
It's
like
like, do we?
sneaking beers just because they were about to fall
Yeah.
over.
It's like, do we serve
Yeah,
coffee or
it's
beer?
just
That's
like,
a real
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
Very. Very compliant group. No one's
yeah, I know.
protesting
I
anything.
always used to joke that I should just say, okay, and the executive director's salary is now $225,000. All in favor? Do I hear any no's?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All in favor? Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
There it be.
Yeah. Well, thanks,
Yeah.
guys. This has been very
Great.
entertaining. Good job. This is a cool
Yeah,
thing.
Thanks. I
thank you.
appreciate
No
you
problem.
doing this.
And
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
we'll
we'll see you guys
down
around.
the road, as they say.
Yeah. Great.
Take
Well,
care.
thanks so much, Ken. I appreciate it. See ya.
Bye-bye.